What is going on, college basketball fans? Welcome back to another video. Conference tournaments have started. March Madness is pretty much here, and I want to talk about some potential bid steals for this week in college basketball. We're going to go through all the top conferences that all have teams getting at-large bids and talk about some teams that aren't in the at-large field but could get a bid steal here this week. So, without further ado, I'm ready to get started. Just want to say subscribe if you guys aren't new. We got a ton of March Madness content coming your way. Let's get right into it. Okay, starting off here with the A10 conference. That's right, VCU is looking like they are going to get an at-large bid at either a 10 or an 11 seed in March Madness. So there are a ton of potential bid steals, and in fact, I think this is the most likely league to get a bid steal in March Madness. I really hope so because I think that VCU is going to get an at-large bid, and I want to see a 2-bid A10 because this has been a very entertaining conference this year. As you guys know, super fun to watch, and there are legit 5 teams that I think could get a bid steal. Honestly, maybe even like 6 or 7. So let's go through them. Got George Mason, Dayton, Loyola Chicago, St. Joseph's, St. Louis, George Washington, and St. Bonaventure. I feel like all those teams could potentially come out of that league tournament and get them an auto bid into March Madness this year. But out of these teams, I definitely do think that George Mason and Dayton are the 2 teams that are the most likely, and Dayton specifically. They just beat VCU on the road in the Siegel Center. That was a very impressive win the other night, and I think that they're going to ride that win into the tournament playing very hot. But my pick for a bid steal out of the A10, I'm going to give you guys my top pick out of each league. My pick's going to be the St. Louis Billikens, and that is because they do have Robbie Avila, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who has been killing it lately. They did just go to overtime with Duquesne, which was a little scary, but they got the win there, and they need to have a big tournament. I want to see Robbie Buckets, Larry Blurred in the tournament this year so bad. We got robbed of seeing him last year with Indiana State. I want to see him with St. Louis this year, so they are going to be my top pick for a bid steal this year in the A10 conference. But like I said, there are 7 teams out of this league that I could see bid steals from. Let me know who you think is going to win the A10 tournament. Next up, we got the ACC, and honestly, I don't see a bid steal out of the ACC this year, but we did see one last year. NC State was not going to be in the March Madness tournament last year, but they went on a tear in the ACC tournament, won it, got them a bid at an 11 seed, and made it all the way to the Final Four with DJ Burns last year. So anything can happen, but I think the top of this conference, Duke, Louisville, and Clemson, is so strong, and the bottom of the conference and really the middle of the conference is pretty weak. I don't see a bid steal in this conference, but I will give you guys my top potential teams, and that would be Wake Forest, of course. Right now, I currently have them as one of my first teams out. North Carolina as well, they are one of my first teams out. I will have a bracketology coming out tomorrow morning, so look out for that, guys. And both of those teams I have currently just outside, so I could see them, if anybody, would be my top picks to get a bid steal. But further down the standings here a little bit in the ACC, I do think Stanford has some potential. I actually like Stanford, and way down there, Pitt. I think that Pitt, if anyone towards the bottom half of the ACC has a chance, I would say Pitt, Notre Dame, Virginia, maybe, a shot in the dark, possibly, to get a bid steal in this conference. But Pitt was a team that got off to a really hot start. They have a lot of talent on that team, but they just couldn't put it all together for whatever reason this year, and they really let the wheels fall off the wagon this season. So I will say I'm going to go with Pitt. I think that they have a lot of players that could carry them throughout this tournament to possibly get a bid steal. I don't think anyone in the ACC gets one, but if I had to pick anyone, I am going to go with Pitt, even though they have been very horrible as of late. This is a cold team, so not the best pick, but between Jalen Lowe, Ishmael Leggett, Diaz Graham, I think that they have some players on this team that could carry them through a tournament. Next up, we got the American Conference, and honestly, this one's going to be pretty quick. We only have one team that's going to get an at-large bid out of this league, and that is going to be the Memphis Tigers. And other than that, North Texas is the clear option to get a bid steal in this league. They got a really good point guard in Aiden Wright. They're a well-coached defensive team. That could be a key to making a push in a conference tournament. So between their defense, good point guard play, and having a pretty good record, honestly, they wouldn't be too far off from an at-large bid, to be honest, and they are the clear choice in the American to get a bid steal. We got the Big 12, and I would be surprised if we do see a bid steal in the Big 12 tournament this year. I think the top of this conference is very strong between Houston, Texas Tech, Iowa State, BYU, Arizona. I think one of those 5 teams, I would be surprised if one of those 5 did not win the conference tournament, but even Kansas, Baylor, West Virginia already kind of secured their at-large bids, so they don't need to win the tournament. There are 2 clear options for a potential bid steal, in my opinion, in the Big 12, and that is between TCU and Kansas State. Both of them really far down the line as far as an at-large bid, but my pick is definitely going to be Kansas State because they have shown that they can beat some of the top teams in this conference. They beat Iowa State on the road this year. They beat Kansas. They beat West Virginia. They beat Arizona. They have some solid wins on the season versus some of the top teams in the Big 12 that are already going to make the tournament. Now, can Kansas State beat a team like Houston or Texas Tech or a very hot BYU team who is one of the hottest teams in the country right now? I'm not sure, but if anyone gets a bid steal out of the Big 12, I would expect it to be the Kansas State Wildcats. So we got the Big East, and the Big East is also going to be tricky. I think St. John's really wants to win the Big East tournament this year. Creighton, UConn, Marquette all have a chance to knock them off, but they are already secured spots into the tournament. Your 2 clear options are between Xavier and Villanova. Both of these teams are not too far off from getting an at-large bid, but I do have both of them as one of my first few teams out as well in my bracketology, so they will have to do some work in the Big East tournament in order to get a bid. My pick is going to be Villanova, though. I think that Villanova, they have some star power on the team with Eric Dixon. They also have some pretty good players around him like Brickus and Wooga Poplar, who has really started to play a lot better towards the second half of the season. My pick is going to be Villanova. They also beat some of the top teams in this conference as well already this year, so that is impressive. So similar to Kansas State, they've proven that they have done it before. They need to do it in the tournament. They would be my pick in the Big East. We got the Big 10 Conference, and I will say, as far as the bubble around the Big 10, heartbreaking loss for the Nebraska Cornhuskers. I would love to pick them for my potential bid steal, but unfortunately, since they lost to Iowa today, they are not going to be in the Big 10 tournament, and Iowa gets that final bid. So you're really looking at the last few teams here: Rutgers, Minnesota, Northwestern, USC, and Iowa as your potential bid steals, because everyone above them are already kind of locks. I would say Ohio State and Indiana, they would like to at least get a first round win in the Big 10 tournament to really secure that spot. But my pick is going to be Rutgers, and I know that's kind of going to be the boring pick because they have Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey, but really with those 2 players on your team, I really do think that they have a better shot than Minnesota. Northwestern, I would pick Northwestern if Brooks Barnhizer did not get hurt earlier this season. I think without him, they are going to struggle a little bit. Iowa has potential because of their shooting, and they've been playing a 2-3 defense that is pretty interesting there, that could get the job done throughout the Big 10 tournament. So Iowa would probably be my second choice, but I am going to go with Rutgers. They have star power. We'll see if they are able to get it done. But really, like a lot of these conferences, I don't see a bid steal out of the Big 10. The only conference really so far that I see a bid steal happening in is the A10 conference. Now we get to the best conference in college basketball this season, and that is the SEC. And it's hard to pick a bid steal considering they are going to have at least 12 teams make the tournament already this season. And Oklahoma and Texas, outside of those 12, are pretty close. I would be surprised if one of those didn't get in. I would think it would be Oklahoma, which leaves us with Texas, LSU, and South Carolina. Straight up, I don't see any of these teams being able to go through the gauntlet of the SEC tournament this season and win the SEC tournament championship. If I had to pick from these teams, obviously it would be Texas. I mean, Trey Johnson is a stud. I would love to see him in the tournament. If they can even get to like the semifinal of the SEC tournament, that would help their at-large chances a ton, especially if a team like Oklahoma goes out early. So there is a chance that Texas could technically get a bid steal in the SEC tournament without actually winning the entire thing, just by helping their at-large chances by making a pretty deep push. So Texas, definitely the clear option for me in the SEC. We got the Mountain West, and the Mountain West is, again, not as strong as the past few years, but we are still going to see most likely 4 bids out of the Mountain West Conference between New Mexico, Utah State, San Diego State, and Boise State. And the clear option is Colorado State. I mean, they have the second best record in conference play. They're 22-9 overall record. They have one of the best players in the conference in Clifford. They are a really good team. They've beaten some of the top teams in this conference already. They're going to be the 2 seed in the Mountain West tournament. That is the best position for almost any team to get a bid steal this season. So Colorado State, one of my favorites as far as a potential bid steal. I would say my favorite so far is out of the A10, really any of those 7 teams, but I picked St. Louis, Dayton, or George Mason out of the A10. Out of the American, North Texas, I think that they have a real shot at it being the 2 seed in the American. And out of the Mountain West, Colorado State. Those are my 3 favorite potential bid steals heading into this week here before Selection Sunday. Quick, we got to give a shout to UC Irvine. Potential bid steal in the Big West Conference. A lot of people will have UC San Diego as an at-large bid. So if UC Irvine can beat UC San Diego in the conference championship, in the Big West Championship, we could see a 2-bid Big West potentially. So I have to give a shout out to UC Irvine. There is a chance they could get a bid out of that league. So had to mention them. Definitely a possible bid still. Last conference we're going to be talking about is the West Coast Conference, because they will have 2 teams getting at-large bids, of course being St. Mary's and Gonzaga. And there are 4 other teams in the tournament, and 2 of those games will be played today as I am recording this video, and that is between Santa Clara and I believe Washington State, and San Francisco and Washington State, and then Pepperdine is still alive after beating Oregon State. Will be playing Santa Clara. So those 4 teams are our options. They are the only 4 teams other than St. Mary's and Gonzaga left in that tournament. Definitely going to go with San Francisco. The Dons have been a very good team ever since back to Todd Golden when he was coaching over there. Even without him, this year they're playing very well. 23-8 on the year. They have the same record as Gonzaga, and they only have 1 less loss than Gonzaga on the conference record as well. And Malik Thomas is one of the best players in that league as well. I do think San Francisco, in the semifinal, they just have to beat Washington State today, and they have to beat, I don't know if they play St. Mary's or Gonzaga in the semifinals, but they will probably have to knock both of those teams out. So that is going to be pretty tough to get a bid steal the way the West Coast tournament is set up. It is a gauntlet, but if I had to pick a team, I would definitely go with San Francisco. But that is going to do it for this video, guys. Let me know your top potential bid steals out of all of these options. Who do you guys think is going to pull off an NC State from last year, get to the tournament, and ride it into March Madness as one of the hottest teams in the country? Let me know down below in the comment section. And yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching.